the next 25 years, we need to generate the kind of growth that China generated in the previous 25 years. People love this when they say China did through state-led capitalism. They love the state-led part of it. What about the capitalism part of it? You know what problem we now have?
There was one common refrain when I was, going through my teen years and early college days, that we preferred coding and software and services over manufacturing and industry. My question to you is that today we are at the cusp of two big transitions. One, of course, is India's outward expansion, and we will be adding close to $6 trillion to our GDP in the next 10 years, of which 50% is going to be based on external trade, and at least 80% is going to be on the waters. Right. The second big transition is technology. Many of these young people in this room would not want to be the ship builders that you are, in many ways are pointing to as a crying need and opportunity, and would rather be.
So I have no
So
problem.
how do we excite the young people into this sector?
So I think you have misunderstood what I'm trying to say. Look, shipbuilding is a sector which is important in its own right. But I think there's a wider idea of and culture of going out there, taking risks in all kinds of fields, whether it's in artificial intelligence or in the field of defense or could be anything, or even tourism. It requires a certain spirit of risk taking
Of betting on something different.
Yes, and that is really what I'm
The
trying.
big bets.
The big bets. Where are the big bets? So that is basically the culture change that we are trying to bring. So the ship project that we talked about just now is not about ships in the end. It is ultimately about creating
Unleashing that spirit.
unleashing a spirit of risk taking, and that is basically what I'm trying to tie it in with an understanding of ourselves and of our history of explorers, adventurers, risk takers. So you could be risk taking in the field of artificial intelligence for all I care. I think the explorers exploring the Indian Ocean 3,000 years ago would have been perfectly understood exploring the universe of artificial intelligence.
What about our very large young population that is now going through an aspirational stage of transformation? How do we bring them into all of these?
So, as I keep telling people, we have just about entered our demographic peak period. However, be very, very clear that this is not going to last forever. This is a 25, maximum 30-year window in which we basically need to max out India's development, growth, etc. At the end of this, circa 2050 or somewhere thereabouts, we too will begin to age. So this is the next 25 years, we need to generate the kind of growth that China generated in the previous 25 years. Now that requires all cylinders firing. We need to fix our own, reform our government, reform our judiciary, reform all these things, by the way, of many of which I speak about. I personally attempt to fix some of those things through process reforms, structural reforms, and so on. But it has to be all decks, all hands on the deck all hands on the deck kind of approach, because frankly, this is the push that will take us through. And we don't have the luxury of time. So I think this is the important thing that we need to, that requires that, people love this when they say China did through state-led capitalism. They love the state-led part of it. What about the capitalism part of it? So we need to get everybody out there pushing, taking risk, and that some of it is physical risk, some of it is business risk, a lot of it is intellectual risk. I mean, what about India's patenting system? And I worked for the last 3-4 years fixing India's patent system. It's now reasonably efficient. But you know what problem we now have? We don't get enough applications. So in the next 12 months or so, India's patenting system will be good enough to deal with 2.5 lakh, that's 250,000 applications a year. Do you know how many we get? We get 100,000 applications a year. Now, even allowing for, very optimistically, about 40% of it will actually be given patents. So if we're getting only 100,000 patents a year, we can only, at the best, give 40,000 patent actual grants. Okay. Now, put it in context. China gives about 900,000 patents a year. Even if you leave out utility patents, low quality patents, it gives out about 300,000 patents a year. So China gives out 300,000 patents a year. Our best case scenario, given the
40,000.
applications giving, is 40,000. And that's not because the government is the bottleneck anymore. It used to be, but we have fixed it. So we now need that risk taking, that patenting culture, and a lot of it has to come from private labs, by the way. Government labs in India, we can be improved. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be improved. But worldwide, most of the patenting is done by universities and, very importantly, the private sector. But Indian private sector hardly invests into R&D because there is no culture of doing R&D.